Hey guys, this is Nick. Welcome back to the Love Fix, and got a special video for you today outside of my normal 10-minute videos, doing a long form podcast. And the conversation is going to be about breakups and do they lead to better outcomes? Will heartbreak in lead to better relationships? So my guest Drew, who I will bring on in one moment, we was having a conversation in my Facebook group, and we had a slight disagreement about a post that I made, and I thought this would make a very interesting conversation. So my post was about breakups lead to better things, and Drew came back with the counterpoint that might not necessarily be true, and maybe for some people it's just better to be single, and that there isn't that one person out there for everybody. So I thought this would be a really good conversation. Okay, so Drew, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Nick, thanks for having me. I'm okay.
No problem. My pleasure. So yeah, I appreciate your time today, and hopefully we can have a interesting conversation. So as I just said, and I know you was listening to my introduction there, so let's just get straight into it. So your position is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that breakups and heartbreaks might not necessarily lead to better relationships. Is that accurate?
I do think that to an extent, it's not that I think that there aren't persons out there who find better after the fact, but I think the side that we don't talk about a lot is there are persons out there who, after healing, after a bad relationship, they just never find that in another person again. They never experience love again, and they've had to just, live a life of singleness or learn to cope with being alone.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So what makes you think that?
Well, to be honest, I think it's personal experiences. It's also just persons I've spoken to. Of course, like I said in my comment, it's not that I'm trying to do a quota or a census based on the masses. I can only speak on what's around me. And I think that's something that I've noticed. I should say I am Jamaican and I am living in Jamaica now, but I spent the last almost 5 years in Germany. And there is a culture difference in how people approach relationships and even separation. So that's something that I've picked up on in both cultures, but just in different ways.
Okay, so would you say one of those cultures has influenced your mindset here? Would it be the Jamaican culture, the German culture, or a combination of two that maybe makes you think that,
Yeah,
it's better for some people to remain single after a bad breakup?
it's probably both as well as some personal feelings from my own experiences. It's not that I necessarily think that you have to stay alone. I just want to put that out there. If it
Mm,
works for you to seek out love again, then perhaps that will yield a positive result. But for example, in these breakup groups or support groups, there's a lot of, I don't want to necessarily call it false hope, but that's what it feels like. Especially with the on Instagram, there's a lot of coaches out there that are doing like this get your ex back videos. And for a lot
mm,
of people, what they don't talk about is that just doesn't it may just not happen that way, that may just not happen. And for some people, it takes years to find another love, especially if you've done the work, particularly if you've done the work. It's very easy if you haven't done the work to just take up with anyone. But if you've done the self-reflection, if you've done the working through your triggers and your traumas, and you're now looking for someone who's equally as aware as you are, I find that that's even harder to do. So
mm.
in a way, it's like being healed almost keeps you single.
Actually, I think, yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I've definitely experienced that with coaching my clients and my own experience. I think when we heal ourselves, it makes us very aware of other people's, should we say, red flags and traumas because we've worked on our red flags and traumas. So that does mean there are less people available, and that definitely can make it more challenging. I fully agree with you on that. But where do you personally stand on that? So do you mind if we talk so I can understand a little bit better? Do you mind if we talk a little bit about your personal journey? So where you your previous relationship to where you are now, and to how you think about future partners?
Sure. I don't even know where to start. I feel like my upbringing probably has a lot to do with how that worked out. I was raised by Christian parents, and when I was being raised, I guess in the Western culture, it's a bit different. It's just I wasn't really allowed to like date very, very early. And my mom was not the one that you're gonna bring someone over to her house and they're gonna sleep over. So I guess it depends on how you were brought up, how you kind of see dating. So really and truly, I started having my own experiences with dating and love when I, went to uni. I dated in high school, but nothing serious. So I don't even count those. I would say in universities where I really started to actually date seriously. Um, and post uni, of course, dating as a full-blown adult, there's just a lot more that goes into it. And I think that that's something too no one tells you. There's a lot of things that you're not told when you're growing up. Um,
Mm,
being an adult changes the dynamics of things because now there's a lot of things that are not only a positive, but even the positives can sometimes be a hindrance. And if you're not aware, especially if you don't have a long dating history, then these things can definitely catch you off guard. And I think that's what would have happened to me while transitioning from just like dating as an early adulthood to mid 20s to now late 20s, early 30s.
okay. So thank you for that. So when what was like the longest relationship you've had?
My longest and would have been my most recent relationship, which was about 3 years. Mhm.
Hmm. Okay. And did that end recently, or was that something that ended a while ago?
Early or Yeah, early last year, about last year, April, that relationship.
Okay.
hmm
Okay. Was you the dumper or the dumpy?
We went back and forth so many times, it seems like it's both of us.
Yeah, I've been there. They can get complicated. So
Um,
I think for most people, when we go through, shall we say, a significant breakup, especially when you've been together for like three years or more, and sometimes even a year is enough.
mhm.
I think that definitely can change how we think about ourselves, how we think about relationships, and that might make us scared to get into future relationships. So, where do you stand personally on that? Are you, because what I want to say is you mentioned about you spoke to some elder ladies in friends or maybe family or somewhere in your community,
Right.
and you mentioned that one of them decided that they wasn't going to go repeat marriage again because they had a lot of crap going on in their first marriage, which is absolutely fine. So, is that influenced your decision, or is that something you're going to be looking towards in the future?
I'm not closed off to love, I would say. I would just say I'm being a lot more cautious now.
Mm,
Um, I think previously I've learned that yes, you want to be in love. Yes, you want to have an open heart, but you have to remember to also guard your heart because everyone's intention is not necessarily aligned with the intention that you have for yourself and for them. And I think something that I learned the hard way is that there are people out there who do want love, but they're just incapable of receiving it. And I think that's something I struggled with in my last relationship with my partner. I think he just had a tough time receiving love, even though he would say, this is what I want, and I want this, and I want the family when everything was going, you after let's say about a year, I can't speak for everyone, but I want to say generally with me, after about a year, I find that the honeymoon phase slows and you kind of settle into we've been in a long-term relationship routine. And there are people out there that I think that when that happens, it's like they're bored or they lose, it's no longer this exciting of like, can I get the girl, I think
mm,
he falls into that category because sometimes I would literally just be like, what is going on? Like, why are you not happy? He would say, he doesn't feel like he's happy. I'd be like, why? He doesn't know. He can't tell me why. So that's something that I struggle with because I made myself that person in the relationship to almost be the fixer. You're trying to figure
mm.
out how can I make this, but it's not your responsibility to do that. The person has to figure that out for themselves. They have to work through their own feelings and everyone has their own history. So I think that's what that relationship taught me. So speaking to older persons, I think it was just a way to, I guess, garner information from persons who I thought were more experienced and see where their mindset were. Of course, I do take into account that the older generation times were different because one of the lady in particular that you're talking about, she got married when she was 19. Obviously, now in this day and age, not many people are doing that. So I guess it would have been different because she would have been reliant on her partner financially
Hmm.
and in other ways that I wouldn't be, considering I work independently, I have my own place. So I take that into consideration. But something that I note is that I guess back then, because she was reliant on him financially and in other ways, even when she realized the relationship was bad, her disposition was to be, let me see how I can make this work. And from what I garner from that, she just doesn't want to go back to that place. So when she spoke to me, she actually said she was open to love and she did hope that she would find it again, but the persons that she met just didn't align. Just like what we spoke about. I feel like she went through her feelings, got to a place of healing, and realized that yes, there were people who were interested, but based on what she would have done, the work she would have done, they weren't the best options for her. So she decided to stay single.
Okay, interesting. So, w- is it a case that maybe, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, would it be a case of that she didn't look for long enough and hard enough?
Well, I can't say. Only she would know that, but I'm guessing
Mm,
if she's in her early 70s, so that's a lifetime
mm,
thing. So I would like to think that that's not the case.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm basing this off a conversation you've
Right.
had with someone I don't know. And to be fair, I've only known you for the last 15 minutes on this conversation. So
Right.
it's yeah, it's very I don't want to make assumptions or
Right.
anything like that. But I think to go back to your previous point about what you said, when we do the work on ourselves, it can make it harder to find a partner that has that level of awareness and that is prepared to work on themselves as um as well as the relationship. I think what that can also do for the people that have done the work on themselves, it can make us a little bit too picky. It can make it in a way we can kind of come up with a different version of the fairy tale story. The fairy tale story goes from, oh, we're just going to connect and everything's going to be okay, to know the fairy tale stories that no, we have to work on this the same amount. And if our thoughts don't align 100% on that, maybe we can be too picky and stay single. Or maybe there's a case of, and you alluded to this just a moment ago, about guarding your heart. And I think sometimes if we guard a bit too much, that can stop us from being vulnerable. And if we're not vulnerable with someone, we can't have a relationship. So do you think that might be the case? Do you think maybe people can get too picky with choosing?
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I definitely have seen that happen, but I also think that there's the flip side where I don't necessarily think it's being picky all the time. Sometimes you just know what you want or don't want based on what you've already been through. So maybe if you see certain signs, you're just like, I would rather not wait to find out how far this can go because you've already dealt with something similar. But then yeah,
Mm,
I would agree that there are persons out there that can be a bit nitpicky. There needs to be a balance of understanding that while you are looking for a healed individual, it's just no one's perfect. So yes, there are going to be imperfections. You are still going to have arguments and disagreements, but I think it's how those are dealt with. And that, like for me, I know that's what I look out for, how a person is when conflict arises. Whereas
mm,
before, yes, I would be like, okay, I want us to work through this. But for example, being shouted at, name calling, I would overlook that and be like, oh, he was just upset. I'm not,
right.
I wouldn't do that anymore because
Yeah.
I know where that can go.
So you're talking about having non-negotiable boundaries when you're dating.
Right. So
Yeah.
you will have discrepancies, but you need to know what's a definite deal breaker for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I 1000% agree on that. In fact, my partner and I, when we first started dating and we started getting serious, we already there was kind of like almost a written contract here. It's like if we do when we do get into arguments, which every couple does, there is no swearing, there is no shouting, there is no blaming here. We're just going to talk about the situation, and I would say 98% of the time that's actually been okay. When I think once we kind of started pointing fingers at each other a little bit, but that was very quickly taken care of, which is a good thing. Um, so yeah, so how would you go about dating now? If you are you actively dating?
I do date, but nowhere near as like before when, well, I've been in a relationship for so long that I don't even know how to explain, but when you come out of a relationship, you almost feel like you're learning how to date again or how to relate again, especially when you're in a relationship that you were like, this is it. This is my person. This is the person I want to marry. There's something a bit off, like when you come back into the dating world, especially things change so fast in the dating climate. So I feel like there's a lot of things that I just didn't think about. This new thing of everybody, what do you bring to the table? I'm just like, what is going on? Why are you people asking these ridiculous questions?
Has somebody actually asked you that on a date?
I've literally been asked this. And
Wow.
there was one guy who literally approached me, and the way he approached me literally annoyed me. I didn't even answer him. He was just like, tell me, I don't know this person. He saw me, came up to me, and his opening statement was, tell me something about yourself that would make a man want to date you. I literally just kept walking. I was just like, you have to be mad. That's how you approach someone?
Well, oh, so it was a cold approach. He approached you in the
It
street.
was a cold approach. I don't know you. You don't know me. And I'm just like, I don't know. The climate has changed where I'm not even sure how to describe it, but the men are different. I don't know how to explain it, but they're different.
Well,
Very,
I would say, yeah, I would say there's a small community that are different, and they're typically called the red pill community. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've heard
Um,
of a couple of those podcasts. So it's definitely changed
yeah.
how we relate to women. And I think it's a bit flipping of the roles almost, even though, I'm not too strict on the whole gender roles. I understand that it can be more fluid depending on the couple, but there are certain
Mm,
things that you sort of expect, I guess, in terms of
mm.
just even the preliminary approach. Whatever happened to, hi, I'm so and so, and you are? I don't know. That's just not happening right now.
Yeah, I do agree with you on this, and that the red pill community, I would say this, it started off as a good idea because they get the term red pill from the film The Matrix. I don't know if you've seen The Matrix or not.
No, I haven't
But
seen that one.
okay, so the Matrix is the story behind the Matrix is that every human being is plugged into this giant AI computer, and the AI has enslaved the human race, and it creates a fake world for us. And some people have learned to break free, and they try to find other people to release from the mainframe of that computer. And they offer them a red pill and a blue pill. If you take the blue pill, you stay in the fantasy land and you forget what happened. If you take the red pill, they will unplug you and they will tell you the truth. So the red pill terminology is it's the truth. So wherever the truth may lead you. Now that's gone down. It's gone down a very bad path. It's gone down a path of seeking the truth to confirmation bias, and a lot of what happens, there are a lot of men out there, and hey, a lot of my clients have gone down the red pill route, and then they've hired me as their coach, and it's taken a lot of rehabilitation to get them back to healthy ways of thinking.
Yep.
And what happens is they get hurt by a woman, as in perfectly normal breakup, and what I'd call a standard breakup. Hey, this doesn't work for me anymore. I don't want to be with you. Nothing untoward, no cheating, no rebounding, nothing like that. Then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, because that man's been hurt, my ex is a narcissist.
Right.
My ex is an avoidant, and everyone, and I have to sit there and say to my clients, okay, look, I hear you, but what did
That's
you
the
do?
case right here.
What did you do in the relationship to actually affect this dynamic? And this comes back to taking personal responsibility rather than blaming someone. Okay, yeah, it hurts. It sucks when you get broken up with. It's a horrible feeling. But that's where the red pill is taking young men now, and it's getting very dangerous out there. And as for, I can only imagine, as for a woman, you're getting these kind of men approaching you.
Mhm.
There's nothing right. Look, there's nothing wrong with a cold approach as long as you do it safely and healthily. Hey, my name's Nick. What's your name? Oh, okay, nice to meet you. Whatever that might be.
Yeah,
Not like,
yeah,
okay, what are you bringing to the table?
literally.
So, so has
I've
that
never
been your?
experienced that before.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think. I mean, look, it's not all men. Most men that I work with are just normal guys, and they just need a little bit of guidance back to the path. And same with the women that I work with as well. Um, so yeah, is that just happened to you the once, or has that happened to you more than once with these kind of guys?
See, just it hasn't happened a ton just because I have not been dating a lot, but I am
Mm.
almost a little bit scared to date consistently just because the quality of persons, I just feel like there's something that's different, and I can't. I think what it is that I'm noticing is, in my opinion, the current climate of dating is very divisive. It's very men do this, women do this,
Hmm.
how to be in your divine feminine energy, how to be a masculine. Like I'm just like, what is going on? Whatever just happened to just supporting each other. It's very like women need to do this, men need to do this. And there are a lot of men telling women what to do, and there are a lot of women telling men what to do. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
it's feeling very counterproductive. It's very, very divisive. And I don't see how that's gonna help us in the long run. I'm seeing a lot of conversation about why marriage is no longer important or necessary. I'm seeing, oh, men are the only ones who benefit from marriage. Women are the only ones who benefit from marriage. So a lot of these conversations are coming up in dating, which that's not what I'm used to. Like dating used to just be let's talk and get to know each other.
Yeah.
So I'm making myself sound old, but I'm not old. It's just, I guess, dating back in uni, that was just not a thing. And having been with my partner for the last 3 years, I don't recall us having these divisive conversations. Maybe once in a blue moon if something came up on social media, but it was just not the main focus of us getting to know each other, at least not in the beginning.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you. And that's definitely come up. And I think the reason that that is coming up is because it it's kind of like cause and effect. For a long time, and I'm, I will probably get a lot of hate from the women listeners here. Is a lot of this has come from like the third wave feminine movement. Now, the original feminism, equal rights for women, equal rights to work, rights to vote, protection under law, all for it. Okay. And then this third wave came along where a lot of women saying, oh, we don't need men and we don't need, we can do all this. And the fact is, well, you do. Just like men need women, we do need women. We need women to be the mothers of our children and to be, our chief support, our main cheerleader, all that kind of thing. Otherwise, what are we here for? And then that started a man's movement, and getting back into your positive masculinity. But in some communities on some platforms, that's gone too far. That's been taken to extremes. There is a place for positive femininity and know your role within that, and there's a place for positive masculinity, but there is a place for men to be okay in some of their feminine, and there's a place for women to be okay in their masculine parts as well. So it does come down to balance. I think a lot of these ideologies are taken to extremes, and this is where we have the problem. No one's talking about the gray area. No, you've either got to be super feminine or you've got to be super masculine, and the man has to always do this, and the woman has to always do this. So I think that's the area we're going down right now, and it is kind of scary. It is very, very scary. I can't tell you how many women I dated before I met my girlfriend, and it was like, oh, okay, there's someone normal. This is new, and I've actually had women ask me how much do I earn. I'm like, I'm not, I- I'm not benefits. I'm not government benefits here. Why you? And it's on the first date. They've actually asked me how much do I earn on the first date, and I was like, right, yeah, you're not getting a second date out of me. This isn't happening. So yeah, it's scary out there. It's
It
really
is.
scary out there. So where are you? Where do you typically get your dates from? Is it online or meeting guys at hobbies, school, work? Where do you typically meet men?
I think I typically just meet people in just life, regular life, whether I go out with a friend and a friend of a friend or just I guess the old school way, but the only person I've ever met online was my last partner, and I don't think I'll be doing that again.
What? Because of the relationship with him?
Honestly, it's not something I intended to do. So it's a very like short but funny story that a friend of mine and she dated online mainly. That's how she dated. And so she kept asking me if I've ever dated online. And I said, no, I don't think that's gonna be my thing. And she literally created the profile and she was just like, okay, I just want you to just give it a chance. I was on there for I think no more than 24 hours. And I matched with my partner and we got off the app pretty much like within a day and, communicated via the phone. And just by talking after a couple, I think maybe after a couple weeks, we decided to meet up. He asked me out to dinner and I declined dinner, but I told him I was fine to go for drinks or a coffee. Like I don't want to sit through a whole dinner with someone that I don't know. And
Mm,
that went really well. We ended up on a date that lasted about 7 hours. We were there a
wow.
ridiculously long time. So, yeah, it wasn't a bad experience. It's just something about crunching down everything to just a profile because someone can look good on paper, but when you get to know them, the nuances that make a couple, that's not something you're going to see just by, hey, I'm Drew. Hey, I went to this school. It's a nice summary on paper, but someone can sound good on paper and then in actual life, that's just not what you're getting. So,
You are 1000% correct on that. It's a highlight reel. It's your best
right.
parts.
Which
So
I
yeah,
don't think makes
yeah.
for great matches. It's just like you're matching with the person's representative.
Mm,
So what I find with that is after things settle down, after the honeymoon phase has passed, you really do get a very different version from what you were sold, if that makes sense.
mm.
And
Yeah,
that's a hard transition.
it is a hard transition, absolutely. This is where people mistake highs for happiness. And what I mean by that is the honeymoon period. The honeymoon period will always wear off. And what people need to understand is that normal, healthy, long-lasting relationships are actually quite normal. I don't want to say boring. Boring is the wrong word. You can have lots of fun in a healthy relationship. What but when I say to people, look, normal relationships are boring, what I mean by that is your anxiety is not being triggered by this person because this person is consistent. This person shows up. This person expresses how they feel authentically and politely without shouting and screaming. This person will call you when they say they call you. This person will turn up when they say they're going to turn up. And if you've only ever been used to chaos in your relationships, not knowing when the person's going to call, not knowing if they're going to show up the next day, not knowing when a breakup's going to happen, then yeah, normality is going to seem very boring because people have been on this up and down roller coaster for years at a time. And that's what they experienced as children because maybe saw that with their parents, or maybe that's what they had with their friendships, or maybe that's all their romantic relationships and it's familiar. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. After the honeymoon period, anyone can do that. That the real work starts
I
after the
completely
honeymoon.
I
Yeah, after
completely
it's
agree. And I've literally said this not only to my most recent partner, but even friends, we've had this conversation. I've had friends call me and be like, "Oh, I'm bored." Like we one friend in particular, she said they went to dinner and they had nothing to talk about. And I said to her, boring is good. Boring
yeah.
means you're settled into your relationship, you know everything about each other, or that's how it seems, but you'll always have more things to talk about. It's just like there's no
Mm.
I guess, mystery. There's no one doing anything that they're not supposed to be doing. But a lot of people get very bored, very complacent, and then now they go looking for, other persons or just some way, somehow get themselves involved in things that they're not supposed. That's what happened in my relationship you know,
Mm.
and then it's just like now you've created this dynamic where we're both under all this stress and anxiety all the time. We don't know if we're coming or going, if we're breaking up or coming together. And I feel like that's the thing that keeps that, I don't even know what to call it, if it's adrenaline or just the
Do-
dopamine hit of like,
dopamine.
right, to be like, okay, this is fun, this is exciting, but that's not fun to me.
Mm. Yeah, and it's not sustainable either, because if people just keep seeking, again, mistaking highs for happiness, keep seeking the dopamine, then they're very much going to die alone. Because what happens when we get to 60, 70, and if we're lucky, 80 and 90, when we slow down, and let's say you have been together 30, 40, 50 years, there isn't going to be much to talk about after that time. What it comes
Right.
down to is just being comfortable in each other's presence and being
Yeah.
okay with the silence. You don't have to talk about something all the time. I mean, my girlfriend and I, we've only been together 18 months, and there are times that we're at dinner and there's nothing to talk about. We're just we're enjoying the meal and we're enjoying each other's company. That's it. It doesn't have to
Right.
be talking about all the time. But there is a caveat to that. I don't know if you're familiar with Esther Perel, but I'd say like she's the godmother of relationships and marriage therapy and all that kind of thing. If you've not ever listened to her, go and check her out on YouTube. She's really, really good. And I'd say probably her most famous book is called Mating in Captivity. And she argues in that book that the safety and stability in relationships is the main cause of the breakup. Because whilst we seek that stability and that safety, which is fine, it does remove all of the adventure. So she argues that we do have to maintain some kind of adventure in there, as in, finding a new hobby to do together, making sure that you're creating new experiences together. And so it's finding that balance. And I would say, look, we probably need about, and this is just my personal take on it, we probably need about 70% of that safety and security where everything's normal, and 30% adventure. Hey, let's go and climb that mountain, or let's go and try this new activity together, or okay, let's buy that house together, or let's have a kid, whatever it might be. So there is an aspect to it of
I
where we
think
do have to have some excitement in there.
I think that's a part of it, but there are also persons who, beyond that, I think they are just not used to being with one person.
Mm,
So, yes, you have a good relationship. Yes, you do things together, you adventure, you have fun. But then I've literally been told, like, oh, you're great. I know you're wife material. I just feel like I met you too early and they're not ready for anything serious and they just want to be with different people. That's also a
mm,
thing, which is just so disheartening because it's like people go their lives looking for someone that they click with in that way. But then you have persons who, I don't know why, and this is how it seems to me, but it seems like the more selfish you are, the more attracted you are to persons who are the opposite of that. So takers always find givers, but it's really hard for a giver to find another giver. I have no idea why, if the universe is just keeping us away from each other, but you tend to attract the opposite of you because naturally, if they know they're takers, even if it's subconsciously, they look for persons who are empathetic. They look for persons who are kind, who are giving, the person who's going to try harder than they will, because then that's the way the relationship balances. And even though we would love to believe that the relationship is always balanced, in my experience, there's always one person that's putting in just a little bit more than the other one,
mm.
you
Yeah,
know?
I can appreciate that and understand that. But
Right.
if I can offer a different perspective on that, so you said at the start of that of what you just said there, it's disheartening. I would flip it and say it's the opposite, because if you come across those kind of people and after a certain amount of time they stop choosing you, then by default they're no longer right for you. So you can say yes, it does suck and it's painful and you put a lot of time and effort into that person, but you can say also, right, okay, this person isn't going to be for me. If this person isn't choosing me every day, if they want to go and be with other people, fine, that's not what I want. Thank you for removing yourself from my shortlist. I am now free to go and find someone who does match with me. And I think if people want to say BS like, oh, it's not the right time, okay, then it's like fine. Whatever you want to call this, you can go along and do your own thing. But I also think that you said about givers and takers, absolutely. There's always going to be in relationships, I think there's always going to be a time when you're the taker and there's going to be a time when you're the giver. Just maybe, maybe you're going through a difficult time with work, with family, or whatever it might be. So
Mhm.
if we can find a healthy balance between being the giver and the taker, and we balance that out, then great. Because there are times where I need to take from my girlfriend, where I need a bit of extra support, and there's times that she needs to take from me. But we both give that in abundance, so it will balance. It will balance out. And I think having those conversations in the dating phase, if you've gone beyond like date three, and maybe you've had a kiss and you've holding hands or whatever, and I tell everybody, hey, look, don't have sex for like at least maybe 6 7 8 dates, because once sex has been had, the brain chemistry just fundamentally changes, and nothing's going to get solved here. We have to have these hard conversations within those first 5 days. Okay, how do you feel about marriage? How do you feel about children? If this scenario was to happen in our relationship, if we have a relationship, do you get bored easily? Have those
Yeah.
hard conversations. And then if after the fifth date and you've had those hard conversations, you can then make the decision, oh, you know what? I don't think this is gonna, the compatibility is not quite there, and you can walk away. But nobody's having those hard conversations. They're only having those hard conversations when they're at the breakup. They're not having the hard conversations when they start the relationships. And this is why I say to people, you need to make dating ugly, not this wonderful experience. Yeah, it can be fun, but if you're dating to be in a serious relationship, just like if you want to borrow money from the bank, they're going to do some checks on you. They're going to look at your finances. They're going to look at your credit score. You have to do the same with anyone that you're going to date. Okay, I'm going to ask you some tough questions, because we're at the beginning. This is the as a polite as that we're ever going to be with each other. We need to have this conversation now. So, do you think that's maybe something is missing from the modern dating, or something actually missing from the way you're dating?
So from the way I'm dating, no, I definitely ask the questions, but I try not to make it seem interrogative. So yes, I would have fun in between, and then when the time is right, we these conversations will come up at different points. But I'm not gonna go on a date and be like, "Hey, so what are your 10-year goals? What are your 5-year goals?" Like that's not fun for anyone. But
True.
in this modern dating climate, I would say that's definitely missing. What's happening now is everyone wants to, honestly, dating is lost in terms of a date now. A lot of guys, in my experience, yes, there are those who might want to meet up, but it'll be like, oh, just come to my house, we'll just cook something there. And I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's not a date. Like, so the
yeah.
effort very I don't know what to call it, very minimal. Or you'll go out once and then after that it's like, "Oh, I'll come to your house," or "You'll just come to my house." And I'm very aware of that now because I also own my own apartment. So you also tend to attract a lot of homosexuals. Like very soon they want to start staying over your house and never leave, and that's not gonna work
Mm,
either. So I'm very aware of those things. But it's the reverse. It gets physical first, or people want to get physical first. And then after you have a physical relationship for a couple months, then you're, oh, I'm not really ready for a relationship. So that happens too. So I'm
yeah.
also very aware of that. So that's how it is now in the dating climate. So when you are
Mm,
actually not wanting to be intimate early on, asking certain questions, it's almost like, oh, you're being weird. Why are you asking these questions? We don't even know each other like that. And
mm.
it's
But
very strange.
yeah, but the aim is to get to know each other like that. That's the aim, isn't it? So I would say, and look, I can tell you from a man's perspective, and when I was going through my naughty phase, when I say my naughty phase, when I had my big breakup in 2020, by let's say mid 2021 to 2022, I was coming through it. I was getting out there dating, but I didn't want to have a relationship. I just wanted to hook up. So
Right.
when someone is saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll come to your house," they're dating to hook up. Okay,
Definitely.
that's fine. I don't care about that. As long what I would do, I would actually tell the woman, "Hey, look, I'm not in for a relationship right now. I'm okay to have some fun. If you're down with that, great. Let's come to my place. I'll come to your place. Whatever we're gonna do. If not, okay, that's fine. But I'm just gonna quietly move on because I don't want to waste your time. I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally.
I
But
don't either, but it's
yeah,
not quite that straightforward. What you have is maybe like you said, someone in that headspace that knows they're not looking for something serious.
mm,
They tend to bait people who they know are looking for something serious. And so
yeah,
I actually had spoken to my therapist about this, and she said usually that happens because a person knows what they get from you when you're completely like involved, when you're completely devoted. You know, the love and affection and what they're able to get from you is at a much higher percentage than if you know that, hey, this is a casual relationship that's not going anywhere. So what you
mm,
find, you you'll be baited or be lied to, and then I don't know, 6 months, 8 months down the line, you're being told I'm not ready for a serious relationship. And it's just like, what have we been doing?
mm, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you on that. And so I think it's important to screen those people out. Is okay, are they dating to hook up or are they dating for a relationship? And I think if someone's dating for a relationship, they will be okay postponing sex until let's say the eighth, ninth, or 10th date. And if you take my girlfriend and I, it was me that said, hey, look, let's not get physical. Let's go out and do fun stuff. Let's go for walks, let's go for nice meals, let's go to museums.
Mhm.
A bit of hand holding and a kiss, that was okay. But there was no going back to each other's place until we got past that seventh, eighth, ninth date. I was like, okay, well, look, we turned up to 8 dates without the expectation of sex.
Right.
We like being around each other. Okay. Because someone that wants to hook up isn't going to hang around for 8 dates. And I can tell you from a guy's perspective, if I wanted to hook up with a woman, if 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 sex wasn't happening within 3 dates, it's like, okay, look, I'm not interested.
You're gone.
Yeah, I'm going. No, and to be honest, as maybe as bad as that sounds, I was always honest about it. And
Yeah.
from day one, hey, look, I'm doing this for fun. I'm not doing this to for anything else. If you still if you come along with me on this and you get upset when I say, okay, look, the fun's over, then well, you knew what you was getting into. And look, I've been on the receiving end of that. I've been on where I've had women just wanting to hook up and I got the wrong idea. So maybe it's not a good idea. But as you get older, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna date with intention. I'm not gonna date because I feel lonely. I'm gonna date because I'm trying to actually build a life for someone. And I think if we can get that intention correct in our heads, because a lot of people date because they feel lonely on a Saturday night, and I've totally been there.
Yeah.
It can be brutal. It can absolutely be brutal. So I think that might be a good screening tool for people. Is okay, I'm going to make dating longer. I'm going to make it a little bit uglier, and there's no sex for the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dates, and you'll be amazed how many women I've coached gone through a bad breakup. And I'd always ask this question pretty much with any client: how quickly did you have sex? And if you knew how many people would say, oh yeah, we had sex on the first date, second date, third date, and
Mhm.
I can kind of almost predict how a relationship is going to go when people tell me about their first 5 dates. Now, I'm not saying I get this right 100% of the time, but when people tell me, oh, it was magical, we just connected, it's like you didn't know this person 2 hours ago. How did you connect?
Right. We just
Yeah,
click.
yeah. It's like, no, I'm sorry. And I can tell, I can almost guarantee it's gonna end up in a bad breakup. And I think this is probably why marriages now are failing quite spectacularly, because people are not doing the checks. Marriage is meant to be, well, obviously there is a religious component to it. I'm not religious, so I see marriage differently. I see it more of maybe from a resource point of view, and maybe from, okay, like a mental health point of view, that there's an extra layer of protection there. Doesn't mean it's gonna work out. But if people are not doing these checks at the start of dating and they're getting married within a year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever it might be, then it was already doomed to failure. So how do you actually feel about marriage? Are you for it, against it, somewhere in the middle?
Personally, I am for it, but I also believe it's up to the individual. So if they decide that that's not for them, then I'm okay with that. The only time
Mm,
I have a discrepancy with it is there are a lot of guys, especially in the groups, they will complain like, oh, it's been 6 years, it's been 10 years, and my girlfriend left me. she wanted to be married, but she was rushing me. And I'm just like, six
After 10
years,
years? Yeah,
10
wow.
years. That's not rushing. Like, obviously, you don't want what that person wants. So
Mm,
that way, I just don't understand. Like, if you know that's not what you want, go find someone who also doesn't want it. I think that's one of the
mm,
major things I'm seeing with dating these days, that we make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I
yeah.
think just one simple rule, find someone who wants exactly what you want. That's it.
Mm,
That's
yeah. I think this is going to sound very hypocritical of me because I met my girlfriend on a dating app, and first woman I've ever been in a serious relationship from a dating app, I might add. But
Mhm.
I think dating apps are affecting the way we date quite badly. Uh,
100%.
because this is what
Everyone's
happens.
all these options.
Exactly. So what happens when, like, so look, there's two types of restaurants, aren't there? There's a fancy restaurant where you go there, you sit down, there's maybe, I don't know, 10 items on the menu, and the chef is going to take their time to get the good ingredients, really prepare the food. You have to wait a bit longer for it to come out because it takes time to cook it. And then you've got the restaurants where it's a buffet, and there's a hundred choices. It's all sitting under the hot plate. You can take everything you want. The problem is when you go to a buffet, you want a little bit of everything. Oh, that looks nice. That looks nice. That looks
Oh,
nice. You
the
got
quality of the food is just not as good.
exactly. The quality is vastly diminished.
Mhm.
So this is what dating apps are becoming. They're becoming a buffet of people, and the quality is not as high. It's not to say that you can't find great people on there. I've got friends that are married and got children and are having great relationships. But
Yeah.
try to find your way through the thousands of people. And I did an experiment once years ago, and I actually made a video about it on my YouTube channel, where I went through around about 1,000 profiles on various dating apps, and I I had my criteria. I was like, okay, look, I have to be at least 6 out of 10 attracted physically, and they have to have certain criteria. And I'm only going to swipe, like, I don't know if it's swipe right, swipe, whatever it is now. I'm only going to try and match with these women if they are on my criteria. I went through like 1,000 profiles. I think, if I remember correctly, there's about 40 or 50 of them actually replied. I got about 10 of them onto like text in WhatsApp, and only two of them agreed to meet up.
Yeah.
That's a crazy low percentage rate. And
It,
I'm confident in my game. I'm really confident in my game of where how to have a funny but healthy conversation and stuff like that. So, and it's because you're paralyzed by choice. If you walk down a street and there's only, let's say, 3 restaurants, you're going to be reasonably happy with the one that you pick. But if there's 50 restaurants, oh, I don't know, maybe the next one is better. And that's what apps are becoming these days, I think.
and I've also had that conversation with friends where I said, even in my job, so I work as an architectural designer, and something that I've learned with my clients, I can't give them too many options, especially when it comes to picking palettes like colors and textures. Like you said, if I put two and I'm like, do you want white or off-white? No problem with the decision. It's made in less than 5 minutes.
Mm,
If I lay out 20 palettes, we'll be there all day.
yeah.
You cannot give human beings too many options. It's just, I don't know what it does to our brain, but it's like it short circuits the ability to make a profound choice.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's the same
Carry on,
way
yeah.
with dating.
Yeah. It's paralyzed by choice.
Mhm.
And I'm not too sure what the psychology behind that is. Maybe it's a fear of missing out. Maybe maybe it's just the society we live in now. You go onto TV. There's 1,000 channels that you can pick from. When I was growing up, and in the UK, we had, before we started getting cable TV and streaming and Sky Television, we had 5 channels.
Right.
We had 5 channels, and we was happy with 5 channels, and there was always something to watch. Now there's 1,000 channels, and there's never anything to watch.
Right.
There's all these streaming apps, and you've got every film, every show available to you in the world, and there is never anything good to watch.
Oh.
because you just think the next thing might be better. And this is, and I think what, circling back to people saying, "Oh, I'm just not ready for a relationship," or, I've been with you 5 years, but I don't want to get married. It's because they think the next person might be better. But what is better is investing in the person that's in front of you. That's where the real happiness is. That's where the real love is. Is that, okay, no, I'm investing in this one person.
Mm. I would agree.
And
But the thing
yeah,
is, you only get to that point when either you have done the work to get to that point, or you know yourself and know that this is definitely what I want. And you've said to yourself, I don't need to be with 10,000 people to choose you. But not
mm,
everyone like that, because I think that was a part of my relationship, for example. But we know that it's hard. Like we spoke about those short-term relationship with a burst of like 6 months, 8 months, and then that happens. But I think what we don't talk about as much is when you're with someone for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then at the end of that, after saying, yes, this is what I want. Yes, I want to be married. Yes, I want to have children with you. And then 5 years, 3 years later, they're just like, I just don't want to be doing that right now. I don't want to be in a serious relationship right now. So that was part of the problem I was having with my partner is
mm,
after all that time and after all that time of saying, yes, we're gonna get married, we're gonna. So when it came down to it, because now we've been together long enough where, family is starting to ask questions, friends and family, not to say that they were really pressuring us, but it was coming up more and more. And it
yeah,
became it became clear. I was just like, some things just not quite right. Because if this is what you want, then what's the problem? And eventually he
mm,
had to be honest with himself. He said he just doesn't want to be in a serious relationship right now. And for the past however many years before, it was the opposite of that. Can't wait to be married to you one day. Can't wait to have children with you. It's also just like you said, just wanting to, I guess, taste everything that the buffet has to offer. Because after such a, not the longest relationship, but a fairly long one, within less than a month, he was with someone else.
yeah. It's first of all, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. It's not a nice feeling. So and thank you for sharing, and thank you for being vulnerable with that.
Mm.
And yeah, the brutal truth is, and I've said this a thousand times already. I've worked with nearly 1,000 people, probably over that now, one to one, getting through their breakups, finding better relationships, even reconciliations. And a lot of them have heard that, I just need to work on myself. That's why I've got to break up with you, and I just don't want to be with anyone right now. And they're literally in a relationship within a month. What that really means is, and this is the brutal truth, and I've been on the receiving end of this, when someone says, I don't want a relationship right now, what that means is, I don't want a relationship with you. That's what that really means. And that's brutal. That is
Yeah.
brutal. And I had to come around to that because I've had women say that to me. Oh, yeah, I just need to be by myself. I just need to work on myself. And then I discovered like a month later, they monkey branched, or they rebounded, or they're out dating. And
And
it's not a nice place to be. It really isn't.
it isn't, but also I think it taught me that yes, I'm not gonna pretend like it didn't hurt to see that or when I found out, because I didn't find out right away. Obviously, it was months later when he actually resurfaced. So, we
Oh, he
started
reached out.
and we started talking,
Oh,
we
okay.
started coming over again. And I actually, I'm not a snooper. However, if you're over here and you fall asleep and you're sleeping over here, and then I'm seeing the same name reoccurring, and I'm just like, I don't know this person. So,
Mm,
no, it didn't take much for me to put two and two together.
mm,
It also just told me like you're definitely not in a place to be a good partner to anyone, because you don't
yeah.
be in a long-term relationship here to work on your relationship. You monkey branch to someone else, and now you're in that was like 3 months in without me knowing what was going on. He was here.
Ouch. Yeah,
So
yeah, it's the relationship with him that's messed up
right. So
with
that's what I
himself.
said to him. And this is when I said to him, I think, I don't know if I didn't say this in the best way, but I was very straightforward with suggesting therapy. He did not
Mm,
like that. He had no intention of doing that, and that's not something he wants to do right now. And I think
yeah.
something when I realized like he has to figure this out on his own. I do I may be one of the few people who think this. I don't necessarily think healing has to happen alone. But if you're not open or vulnerable enough to give your partner the space to be that support for you, it makes no sense. So this
Mm,
is what I came to realize because I was trying to do that, trying to be that person. I said, I will go with you. We can do the sessions together. I said, I'll help you pay for it. I tried everything and he didn't
mm,
want to. So that's when it became, and he literally said that to me after asking so many times. There was one day he got like very irritated and he was just like, I don't want to. I don't want to. Don't you get it? And it's like when he said that, I just had a moment where I was just like, he doesn't want to. Don't you get it?
mm.
I had to be saying that to myself, because I kept
Yeah.
thinking it would be really simple to just do this and kind of, start working through whatever is going on with you. But he just didn't want to. And when he shouted that, I didn't want to. I don't know what, but it just really registered with my brain. As I'm just like,
Mm,
not someone who doesn't have the resources. He just doesn't want to.
mm. Yeah. And that must have been really hard for you to hear because you was trying to save that relationship. But if he's not meeting you halfway, if he's not putting in equal effort, then it does become a relationship of one because you can only put your 50% in. You can't give any more than that. You give any
Right.
more than that, then you are diminishing yourself. You have to keep 50% back for your life, your career, your friends, projects, family, hobbies, whatever it might be.
Right.
And if you find yourself sacrificing other parts of you for someone that doesn't want to turn up for themselves, then yeah, that's not a
Yeah.
partnership.
No.
I'm gonna take a stab in the dark here, and I might be wrong, but he, what's the relationship like with his parents? Are they divorced?
They're not divorced, but they've been separated for years. So
Okay, it's a separate. Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think that has a big part to play. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but that is something I had mentioned to him.
Mm. Oh,
It was
yeah.
up in our relationship without divulging too much. It came up with him like, I don't want that kind of relationship, and he was very fearful of that. But
Mm.
the fear of it, while he thinks he's avoiding it, a lot of his actions inadvertently, it's just like this is exactly the kind of behavior that would lead to that. So I don't know what to call that, if that's I don't know,
Yeah.
disassociative.
Yeah. I think. Well, not fair. I mean, there are studies that actually confirm this, that children that grow up in stable environments where you got two healthy parents physically and emotionally and mentally, they're maintaining their marriage and they're taking care of their marriage. Children will have they will have better educational and social development. They will have better cognitive and behavioral development, and they will see that as their blueprint of what a relationship should look like. If they grow up in a blueprint where one or both parents are cheating, one or both parents are taking drugs or getting drunk all the time, shouting, screaming, breaking up and getting back together all the time, they're going to see that as the first blueprint. And that is going to cause some kind of trauma. And they're going to take that into their romantic relationships. And the crazy thing is, you said it earlier, they are attracted to the opposite. Unstable people are typically attracted to stable people and vice
Right.
versa. And then once it gets to a certain level of development, once the emotions get to a certain point and things are getting serious, they back off. Or, what if I mess this up? What if this ends? And then they just close that down. They actually will hurt themselves now to prevent themselves from being hurt in the future, if that makes sense. And yeah, so it can go down a very sticky path. But
I do
as
agree.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's it's okay, it's okay. As painful as it can be for us, because I used to be that person as well. I used to be the fixer. No, we can do this and we can do that, and it gets to a point where it's just like it's not my responsibility. My responsibility is my bullshit. I can only take care of that, and I can be or anybody. You can be their main support. You can be their biggest, not support rather. You can be their biggest cheerleader and say, "Yeah, come on, you've got this. I'm backing you the whole way." But they've got to go and do the work, and it then falls onto us. Okay, why are we choosing these people? Because, and I think a lot of the time, and I used to be horribly attracted to avoidant women because I was very anxious, And so
Right.
I'd always try and choose women that needed fixing because I would think to myself, the only value I can bring to this relationship is if I fixed it from the start, you know. And it comes back to the argument, okay, what are you bringing to the table? I never thought I was bringing anything to the table because I had no confidence or anything like that, you know. But it gets to a point where when you fix the relationship with yourself and you're happy with yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin, it's like, well, I can just turn up. I can turn up. I'll put my best effort in. If it doesn't match, it doesn't match. Okay, I'm fine with that. And you know, and but we do tend to find that we are attracted to, let's say, a manifestation of our traumas. Every woman I've up until now, every woman I've ever dated
Has been an avoidance.
was, yeah, massively was a real life manifestation of what I experienced as a kid
Mm.
because that was my first
Funny how that
blueprint.
happens subconsciously because you might think you're not doing it deliberately because going back to what you said earlier, I think that there are two ways about it is either you turn out exactly like what you've seen or the opposite because my
Mm,
parents are also married, but they're also separated and they've been for years. So in a way we have the same situation. But
mm,
I guess where it would be different is once my parents separated, they lived separately. I think his parents separated and they stayed in the same house. So there would have been a lot
ooh,
of fights and arguments up until a certain.
mm,
So I think that's the part that affected him. So something that he
yeah,
say is he something I noticed though, he ascribes a lot of it to his mom, being that he didn't get enough emotional, I guess, attention. Like she wasn't there as much as he would have wanted emotionally to support him.
makes it
But
makes sense. It makes sense because he finished with you, started dating someone new, and came back. That makes perfect sense.
yeah, but also what I found strange about it is the separation was as a result of infidelity, not on the side
Mm,
of mom. So I always
yeah,
when we would speak about it, he would get very it's a topic that I had to have a conversation and said to him, you know, I'm going to not speak about this unless it is something that you come to me and you ask me something. I'm not going to have any commentary because once that comes up, because I'm trying to be more objective rather than, yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly, he would get very upset. So he would say, you know, you're playing devil's advocate. And I'm like, I'm just trying to step away from seeing this from the eyes of a 10-year-old. You know, we're now at the time we would have been like 27, 28. I'm just like, we can't be looking at this like we're still 10 years old, which is how
mm,
he sees his parents from that little boy view. And I'm
yeah,
like, you're older now, be more objective about you understand what infidelity does to a marriage. You can see why
mm,
this person perhaps used all their resources to get themselves together. So yes, while it may not have been the best situation, you can understand why you would not have been getting the attention that you required. But he just doesn't see it that way.
mm. Well,
So
yeah,
I would have found out about avoidance and all of that post us breaking up. I had no idea about anxious attachment, fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant. So I actually found out about that through my therapist, you know, us
mm,
talk because I had no knowledge of it. It's funny, I knew all of the I would say to him, you're being avoidant, but not because I knew what an avoidant was.
yeah,
I found out about
yeah,
all after the fact. So I didn't even know how to work with someone who had these avoidant tendencies. So from my side, it was just, I just wasn't understanding where I'm here for you. I had more of a, now I know secure attachment. I'm being all the support, all the, you know, I'm there for you. And it's just no matter what I say, no matter what I do, you're upset, you pull away. That's hard to deal with. It's hard for anyone to deal with.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
at a certain
absolutely.
point, that's why I'm saying at a certain point, I just had to realize that while this stuff that's happening, it's not what I would like to happen. I think that's the part that I struggled to work on, and I'm still working on it. It's just you have to let people just do what they want to do, even if it hurts.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are 1000% correct on there, and you made a brilliant observation about seeing it through the eyes of a 10-year-old, and that was a fantastic observation. Ironically, you're absolutely right. We have to, like we've got that 10-year-old version of ourselves, that traumatized little boy, little girl, whatever. And we're looking at it from when we're 28, 30, 35, 40. And it's the adult version of ourselves. We actually have to give attention to that 10-year-old version. We have to pick up that 10-year-old version of ourselves saying, hey, look, I'm here. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to protect you. It's okay. We have to take care of that part of ourselves, because what we do, we lock that version of ourselves away in a little box. We put it under the bed and we hope that it never comes out. But as we get older, it slowly makes its way out, saying, hey, hello, you've left me under here for 20 years.
Definitely.
I need some love now. Yeah, that's what we're running away from. And only he and anybody can come to that realization of like, hey, okay, look, I don't want to keep going through these same relationships. I don't want to keep having breakups, and I don't want to keep falling out of connection or love with someone because of
Right.
my trauma. But you,
You have
I
to get
mean,
to
it,
on your own.
yeah, absolutely. And look, like my breakup that started me doing the love fix and coaching people, it wasn't the worst breakup I ever went through, but it was the hardest, if that makes sense. I've had far uglier breakups. This one was quite amicable, but it was the most brutal one emotionally. And I went through that phase of, oh, my ex this and my ex that. And then I had to sit down one day and say, okay, Nick, but what are you doing? Why does this keep happening?
But do you
Well,
know, I think that's something that I find that he struggles with, and I didn't say this directly, but he's not introspective. That's something that I
mm,
had a tough time with dating him for so long. Even with smaller disagreements, it's very rare that he would actually acknowledge his part, or I had to say to him, you don't apologize ever. Like he doesn't
wow.
ever say, I'm sorry. If you approach him with something, he's going to tell you reason why, in terms of, oh, I don't know why you're upset. Because, for example, him being late a lot was something that would reoccur in a relationship. And in the grand scheme of things, that's not a big deal. But if you've been dating someone for 2 years, 3 years, and this is something
Yes.
constantly, imagine just, and I'm not talking 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm talking like an hour and a half. And you don't call,
Oh,
send a message. You just leave me standing here or leave me waiting here. And when you get here, there's no explanation. And then I'll say,
wow.
like, hello, you were supposed to be here at 11. It's now 12:30. Well, obviously I had something to do, or, I had to stop. I had a work call. And I'm just like, that's besides the point. You could have sent a message. You could have made a quick call, something to say to someone, I'm behind by an hour, or I'm behind by an hour and a half, and he just doesn't see it that way. Oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's like,
That's crazy.
and
That would drive me crazy if someone doing that to me.
it drove me crazy. But at a certain point, I think I made the decision, like, I know who I'm dealing with. So when I say, okay, we're going somewhere, and he's like, okay, at 12, I don't even bother getting ready for 12. So I no longer got
Wow.
upset by that, because I know he's gonna be late. So
Jesus.
I always had to make the adjustment in that way. So those smaller things were easier for me to navigate,
Mm.
because in the grand scheme, if I want him to be early, I'm telling him a time that's earlier.
Yeah. I
I
think I mean I get why you did that, but by doing that, that then enables that behavior.
It
That's
does.
so that's abandoning your non-negotiable boundary. And like for me and my partner, like timekeeping is a big thing. And even if I'm running 10 minutes late, I will tell her, say, hey, look, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm gonna run, I'm behind. Even if I'm 10 minutes late, I'll say, look, I'm really sorry. And it's not a big deal. I don't think, but if I was constantly over an hour late and not given an explanation, she'd be going crazy. And rightly so. I think also as well, it just comes down to respect, Drew. It's just that's showing your partner respect. Look, I'm running 30 minutes late. I've got stuck on a work call. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you. And
No,
I
I
think that's a red
agree.
flag. That's a red flag in itself, isn't it?
Depends. And that's why I'm telling you, I've had to take a step back and do some introspection, because I think I allowed a lot that should not have been allowed. So
Mm,
that, sometimes healing keeps you away from maybe another potential romantic interest, because it's something now that if I notice it early on, I'm out the door. Like, and someone might say, well, that's not a big deal. Everyone say, but it's how it's not the fact that he was late. It's how he dealt with it post.
mm.
I remember having conversations and being like, even if you just send me a message to say 2 words, running late. I don't even need the explanation right there and then. Maybe when you get to where you get to, then you say, hey, babe, this is what has happened. But I would always get defensive behavior as to, oh, I clearly had something important to do. Why are you making this a big deal? I could have been on time. If I could have been on time, I would have been on time. And it's like, you're missing the point. So making
But
so allowance
yeah,
for that behavior, it's just, and that was just one of many. And it's just, that's why I'm not even worried when I saw that, okay, there was a rebound and it's very creepy. She almost looks like me. It's in a very, very,
that's that's more common than you think. And I've dealt with hundreds of rebound cases, and I would say it typically goes that way more often than not, where they'll find someone quite similar, either physically or personality wise, to the person that they're leaving, or they go the exact opposite. But I've tend to find that finding someone that kind of looks like you or kind of acts like you, has similar quirks, that is is very common. And I think, I don't have any scientific data to back this up, but my theory would be is because the breakup is difficult for the person that is doing the dumping as well, even though that might be rebounding a monkey branch. And the reason they've rebounded a monkey branching is to avoid the pain of the breakup. That's the only reason they're doing it, is to avoid the pain of actually going through the breakup. That's why they do it. And if they've
but
spent a significant amount of time with you and they've got used to you, the way you act, the way you talk, the way you laugh, the way you smell, the way you comfort them, there's now a big hole where you used to be, and they're going to try and like fill that back up as quickly and as familiar as they can. So it makes perfect sense. And in a way, I tell my clients, hey, look, the rebound's actually flattering because they can't deal with it on their own. So let them crack on. Yeah, you're here getting help. You're the strong one. You're the one that's doing the work. You're the one that's going to be better in the future. Trust me on this. But
looking
that's
it
very
up though,
difficult.
it's shown that studies have shown that rebounds do actually help you to get over your ex quicker. So I guess that's the reason why, based on what I've
Uh,
seen.
Yeah, I would say in the short term, yes. In the short in the first 3 to 6 months, I would agree with you. But on in the long term, then I would say no, because as we discussed earlier, you can't form connection with someone you just met that quickly. It takes a long time to form that trust and to form that true connection with someone. So yeah, I called it the emotional painkiller.
I'm
three
not
to
much
six
social media person, but I was able to, the reason why I knew that, because I asked him about it once I realized what was happening. And he was being very evasive and, oh no, I haven't done, like he'd be like, I haven't gone anywhere with anyone since you. But she was already posting him online. So
Mm,
about we broke up, well, like let's say we broke up April 3rd. Her first post of them together was like the beginning of May.
wow,
It was very, very quick.
that's brutal.
So
Yeah.
but when I say look, I think just physically in terms of style, not like I guess facially, but
Mm,
I can see
yeah.
with if you did not know me or if you just saw it at a distance, it would be very easy to assume that that was me. Um,
Yeah.
where she is different, and this is what surprised me, is she's about a decade older than him, which is
Well,
very
see, that doesn't surprise me at all. That actually makes sense
no, because
because
I think
of what you.
I think the one time I got upset was I felt like he would treat me like I was like a version of his mom, and I really didn't like
Mm.
that. So I
And exactly. So that's exactly why he's
and
chosen a woman
there's
10 years
more.
older to get mothered.
There's more. So we always talked about, even preliminary where you said we'll have those hard conversations. And I remember from like our second or third date talking about like children, if we want children. And something he highlighted is like he wants his own children. She has a child, which he always
Mm.
never date someone who has a previous child. So there's a lot of things that were just like the opposite of what he told me in this person, but in a way, she's similar to me at the same time. So I
Yeah.
was a bit taken aback. That's not what I expected. And so she would be well into her 40s. And I can't quite
Wow.
figure out why at 31 years old you would be dating someone in their 40s. So I just decided to leave it alone.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been a journey to get to this point where I can even speak
Yeah.
about like out loud because I think it all just came very fast, like unexpectedly, because I expected him to take some time to reflect, but I might have fooled myself because even in the relationship, he was never really the let me take a moment to introspect type person. That was never the
Mm.
case. That's why I'm saying I don't know if everyone has that moment where they eventually come down. You would have mentioned that you had your moment where you just didn't want anything serious. I don't know how long you did that for, if it took you a year or two, and then you get to that point where you're just like, okay, I'm not serving myself well. Let
Mm.
me look within. So I don't know if that moment is ever going to come.
Yeah, and you shouldn't wait around for a moment like that. The fact is you've done the right thing by focusing on yourself and getting yourself to the point where you are investing in a relationship with yourself and saying, hey, this is what I want in a relationship. And I think every ex teaches us exactly the lesson we needed to learn. And the exact lesson that I'm getting from you is what you need to learn is that, okay, I need to learn to choose a man who can, one, turn up on time and apologize for his mistakes. And I think that would go a long way for what you want, and you're working towards that. You've got this list that you're working on, and you're becoming that list. If you become that list, you will attract someone that identifies with that list. And yeah, there's going to be less men available, but there's 4 billion men out there. Even if you eliminated that down to, let's say, 20,000 men, okay, there's still 20,000, there's still 20,000 men to choose from.
Agree and
One of
disagree.
one of them's gonna fit the bill.
I agree and disagree because this is something
Yeah.
I had talked to my therapist about, and she actually, her analogy was bugs are always going to be attracted to light. That's what she told me. It's just like, yes, you are all these things because I'm that person just like you, Nick. If I'm gonna be late, I'm going to say that, like, hey, I'm running 10 minutes behind, I'll
Mm,
let you know. But just like she said, bugs are attracted to light. So these persons, just like we spoke about earlier, they look for the opposite of themselves in another person. It's just that you don't usually see it right away. Something he kept saying to me when, things were coming down to an end, I asked him, I said, sometimes I feel like you're a whole different person from like the guy I dated for like the first, I want to say about 10 months to a year in. I would say that's when I started to notice some of the changes. But specifically, I think at 10 months. I think that's the first time I really had a moment where I was just like, what's going on here? And he responded, well, I was that guy for you. And, it really like stuck with me because I'm like, so
wow.
you essentially got to know me and you became what you knew I would be attracted to. But once he got comfortable, little
Mm,
slowly just stopped happening because I never had
yeah.
to ask, like, okay, are you running late? I never had to ask for him to check in. There are just certain things he would do innately. And let's say a year and a half in, 2 years in, that was just not happening anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes he would go off. Like I remember, like on Sundays they go golfing. His brothers and his dad. He would be gone the entire day, and I just wouldn't hear anything. And when I do call, it's kind of like, well, you knew where I was, and it's just before I would get updates. Hey, we just finished the ninth hole. We're about to go to XYZ, and that just wasn't happening anymore. So
Mm,
I think it's more obvious to pinpoint these things in a short-term relationship. But I think where I was not so aware is that this does happen in long-term relationships as well. It takes longer, but you still need to pay attention where unfortunately a year and a half in, when your feelings are completely wrapped up in this person, if they're now displaying these signs of changing, you still need to be able to take a step back and be like, I might have to walk away. And I think that's where I failed myself. Because I was just like,
And
I was just like, I've already decided this is my husband. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what he does, we're gonna figure it out. And once he
yeah,
became aware of that, um, I think what my therapist said to me is don't ever let your partner get to the place where they recognize that you will never walk away from them. And I think that
mm,
I failed in my relationship. I definitely got to that point where he was very aware of that.
yeah. And I would say, Drew, you're in good company. I think everyone's done that at least once. I know I've done that. And because it is hard to walk away. It's not easy. You can be the most secure person in the world. To walk away from someone that you've invested a lot of time, energy, and love in, and you become used to walk away all of a sudden goes against every natural human instinct that we have. And
Especially
that's just biology. So
right.
it's so difficult. So there's no, I don't think anyone can truly blame you for that. I mean, if if it kept happening relationship after relationship after relationship, you see all these red flags and you stay, then there's a question say, okay, look, there's something you're not loving yourself correctly here. And I've certainly had clients that way, go down that path. But I think, look, from what you've told me, I think you're on the right path, and I think your views on relationships, marriage, and dating are very healthy. And hey, they've actually aligned a lot with mine. I thought we was going to disagree on quite a bit here, but we've ended up agreeing on way more than I expected. So yeah. So look, I think you're doing great, and and thank you. Look, you've had some really good insights here, and I've been pleasantly surprised. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Um, okay, Drew, thank you so much for giving me your time. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing your story, and I hope the listeners get something out of it. And yeah, thank you. Is there any last things you want to cover before we wrap this up?
No, I just wanted to say thank you also for having me. It's been a delight having this conversation. And
Mm,
too, I'm surprised, that we agreed on more because, our initial comment were
yeah,
was very different, but I'm glad that we're more aligned.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think uh, when you're commenting on Facebook groups or forums, I think a lot can get lost in the translation with text, and this is why I like having conversations with people because I've tend to found even when people have categorically disagreed with me online, I say, hey, look, cool, let's jump on another podcast and let's talk it out. Nine
Mhm.
times out of ten, it's like, okay, we actually agree.
Right.
And that's the amazing thing. This is why I like having these conversations because it's more human. I think this is just a good way to just to have a normal conversation. All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Drew. Enjoy the rest of your day, and maybe one day we can do this again sometime.
Okay, you too, Nick.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Thank you. Bye bye. Okay, that was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed that one, guys. And thank you for sticking with us and listening. And if you've got something out of this, please leave your comments below. I definitely think Drew had a lot of good points there, especially when it came to viewing the world based on your 10-year-old self when you're in your 30s, 40s, or whatever it might be. And that's what we really need to address at the end of the day. We need to fix the traumas of the past so we can have a better tomorrow and a better present, really. Yeah, so it was a really interesting conversation. As always, guys, thank you. You are enough. You're going to be okay, and I'll see you on the other side.